Test, test, test. If you did it thematically, it would look. If you have to say. All right, it's time, y'all. All right, everybody. Hey, welcome, welcome, welcome. Yeah. It's time to roll up our sleeves and get to work, right? Welcome to the Spring 2025 Capstone Symposium for the Program on the Environment. Are you excited to be here? All right, that was good. That was good. I also have a special guest to introduce. A guest that the folks in my 490 and 492 class know well. Someone who's been watching over them all quarter long and has decided to make a special appearance for today only. Hey, baby. Hey, baby there. Watching over us yet again. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Sean McDonald, and I am a faculty member of the Program on the Environment. I'm also the capstone instructor for the culminating courses in our program. The capstone is the culmination of a tremendous amount of work on the part of our students. It represents a full year of labor, research, and internship, all brought together in a neat little package for all of you. So, the topics of our symposium are as diverse as our students. We cover everything: policy, regulation, food systems, agriculture, environmental justice, restoration, natural science, sustainability, and business, green business, all of that stuff. We cover it all. And you'll see many of those topics today in our lightning talks. Our students who are here presenting are going to be doing what we call Ignite style lightning talks. For those of you who are not familiar with the format, it is interesting. It is exciting. It's 5 minutes long, 20 slides that advance automatically every 15 seconds. It's coming at them whether they're ready or not, but the good news is they are ready. They are prepared. They have been working hard. And they're going to share that with you today. The students will be judged by our anonymous panel of alumni. Thank you, alumni who are here. Shout out to our alumni. Don't raise your hands, though. Don't raise your hands because then you're not anonymous anymore. Our anonymous judges are here. I really appreciate these folks coming back and being with us and sharing in the excitement of this event. I also want to give a shout out to our site supervisors. You can raise your hand. If you're a site supervisor, raise your hand. Yeah. And I also want to shout out our faculty advisors. Shout out faculty advisors, raise your hand. Without these folks, Capstone would not be possible, and I appreciate everything that they do for our students. So as I mentioned, these are Ignite style. They come at you fast. They're fun, and they really rely on an energetic and enthusiastic audience. So I want you all to practice your presentation faces. What is a good audience participation face? Yeah. What are you going to do when they're done presenting? Yeah. What are you going to do when I introduce them? Yeah. You're going to do all of that. It's going to be fantastic. All right. I do want to just say that this is day 2 of our 2-day symposium. If you missed day 1, please check out the program online. You can scroll through and see the presentations that were done, the poster presentations that were done online. If you click on any of these names, like for instance, let's click on Alex's name, then you would get a summary of Alex's projects as well as a thumbnail of the poster and a recording of the presentation. So please, if you haven't checked these out, do so. Scan the QR code there and it'll take you right to our program. You can learn all about the 36 projects that were presented on day 1. All right. So without further ado, I am going to begin this session, session A, which is a generic. I'm calling this session Surf and Turf. We're going to start seaside and we're going to work our way through the fields and forests of the Northwest. It is going to be glorious. It is going to be glorious. Yes. So let's go ahead and get started with our very first presenter today. Our very first presenter is Kendra Peterson. Or Pearson, yeah. Pearson. It's Pearson, everyone. Kendra Peterson. Kendra is an environmental studies major and a minor in gender, women, and sexuality studies, graduating in June of 2025. Besides her work at the Mass Center, which she is continuing through the summer, she is also the captain of a co-ed rec UW softball team. And if that isn't enough responsibility, working in an aquarium, being a captain of the softball team, she also is the proud owner of more than 50 houseplants. She's recently started taking care of some new babies that she's going to talk about today in her presentation. The title of her presentation is Raising the Curtain to Husbandry in Aquariums. The host organization she worked with was the Mass into an Aquarium. Her site supervisor was Emily Bjorngard at the Mass.
Yes.
Her faculty advisor was Chris Medtigna at the School of Aquatic and Fishery Science. Are you guys ready?
Yep.
Green light needs to go.
Okay.
Hey, that's space.
Do you guys hear me well? Good? Okay. Let's do this. All right. I would first like to start off by asking the audience if they've ever been to an aquarium. Great. Now keep your hand raised if you've ever learned about husbandry or what happens behind the scenes at an aquarium. Perfect. You may all lower your hands, but remember the lack of hands you saw for my second question. I, last quarter, interviewed at the Marine Science and Technology Center Aquarium as the head of the jelly team and an intern for this life support group for the entire facility. But you guys might be asking already, what is husbandry? Husbandry is a key form of conservation in labs and aquariums worldwide. I'm talking cultivation, care, and breeding of any animals, plants, or species in general in facilities to make sure they have a happy and healthy livestock. But aquarium husbandry isn't just about keeping animals alive. There's so much of a bigger picture that we're talking about here. We're talking about ecosystem health, conservation methods, and creating a space that inspires new work for other conservation methods to come in afterwards. So, I personally practice husbandry at my aquarium with my jellyfish babies. Give me a second. Right here. I did this through care, cultivation, and breeding through the phases of Euphira, polyp, and medusa to now form my babies. Little babies. But, okay, yep. But husbandry isn't just about what you see in the public. There's so much work that happens behind the scenes. Like in this photo here. This is me doing a water quality check and change, and this tank was built entirely by me, by hand, to replicate a larger version of the ones that we have on display. So, my research question for you guys today is, how do we address issues with educational husbandry in aquariums, and what are some ways to get more people interested in husbandry generally as a whole? Luckily, through my internship, I was given the great opportunity of interviewing people all across Washington who work in aquariums, aquacultures, and labs, who use husbandry every single day. When I asked them, what is the biggest issue you see with husbandry? Most answered that it's, of course, funding, getting information out to the public on what happens behind the scenes, and yep, getting information out to the public about what happens behind the scenes, and of course, labor. The issues with labor are exponential in the aquatic field. One way to get more people into the field, in my opinion, would be through educational incentives. People don't know what's happening, and without that educational practice being used in aquariums, it's never going to. So, throughout the interviews, I found 3 issues that I think are critical to advancing the field, which is creating a space of learning for the next generation. There's a lack of interest from the public, and of course, there's a lack of funding, public or privately, worldwide. So, nowadays, children are lacking the natural experience from the world, and this is due basically from technology. If aquariums were able to use this database, technology, the internet, everything in between, as a way to form educational practices, and get their information out to the public about what happens behind the scenes, they will be able to take this further into the next generation and make and destroy that gap between younger generations and aquarium work. But of course, this can't happen without funding. Funding is a huge issue right now, impacting public aquariums worldwide, especially in this year. Without this funding, there's never going to be an opportunity to get this work off the floor and into the field. But this is all based on aquariums too. So they're going to have to be willing to make the connection and effort to adopting new communication methods. These are through the internet and technology, through either virtual feeding tours or even showing what happens behind the scenes. So overall, that was 3 big issues that I talked about. One is, of course, we need critical funding. Another one is expanding education out to the public, and creating a new and improved labor force that works with technology and the internet as well. Yes. Overall, I think that's the way to do it. All right, now I'd like to ask the audience one more time to raise their hand the next time they open their phone or go to an aquarium they would like to learn about husbandry and what happens behind the scenes. Perfect. I'm glad you agree with all these people behind me. All right. Now I'd like to thank my faculty and staff advisor for everything that they've done for me, and I'd like to thank my family and friends for being supportive and with me right now, especially within the last 48 hours. All right. Now I'm opening the floor to questions. Why I'm clapping? Yes, question? Yes, that is a great question. For anyone who couldn't hear the question, it was, do I see myself following the career of conservation and husbandry? And I'd actually like to say yes and do a little shout out. These are my 2 beautiful little creatures that I'm working with right now. This is a baby giant Pacific octopus. Her name is Pickles. And this is one of the 3 baby skates that I work with almost every single day through care, cultivation, and breeding.
Question?
Do you think that there might be some kind of backlash if we do go behind the scenes and aren't able to watch some of the work of husbandry? Because I think there's parts of like nature us humans don't like to think about, things related to death, mating, that kind of stuff. So do you think that it can be a positive thing to also maybe have negative consequences?
Yes, the question was, do you think there will be negative consequences with letting people come behind the scenes at aquarium? And honestly, yes, like there's negative consequences all the time, specifically with working with animals. It's such a hard line that we have to cross, but I think because of the personal impact that humans have made on the earth, sometimes you have to see the ugly truth. And the ugly truth is that we have to integrate ourselves into their environments now to make a livelihood for them. Yes.
All right.
I don't know why I'm stopping again.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kendra, for kicking us off. Kendra Pearson. Now we're moving on to our next presenter, Jacob Williams. Jacob is an environmental studies major and a minor in urban design and planning. He's been able to blend his major and minor in a variety of ways during his time at university, including leading students on a bamboo architecture and regenerative agriculture course in Ecuador. And if that wasn't enough, he also works for the nonprofit Breaking Barriers as a consultant aiming to incentivize businesses with fleet electrification and EV funding opportunities. As you will see, Jacob likes to think creatively about addressing the wicked problems. The title of this presentation, Climate Solutions or Ecological Gamble, Understanding the Trade-offs of Ocean Alkalinity Enhancement. Host organization was NOAA Fisheries, where he worked with Paul McElhaney, and his faculty advisor was Chris Murray at Woods Hole Oceanographic. Let's give it up for Jacob.
Testing, testing. I got a cool laser pointer, so this will be fun. Imagine a world where the ocean helps us undo the damage we've done to the atmosphere. You've probably heard of climate change or ocean acidification, but what if we could do more than just slow these down? What if we could actually reverse part of it? My name is Jacob Williams, and today I'm going to tell you about a bold new innovation called MCDR, or marine carbon dioxide removal, and how I study its effects on an important species, the Dungeness crab. And that's an egg sac, by the way. Now, there are many MCDR approaches out there. Some sink biomass, others grow seaweed. In my capstone internship with NOAA, we focus specifically on something called ocean alkalinity enhancement, or OAE, which reduces acidity and helps absorb atmospheric CO2. Alkalinity enhancement works by essentially increasing the ocean's natural ability to absorb carbon dioxide by raising its pH. In our trials, we did this by using sodium hydroxide, a base. But you can think of it like putting a giant Tums in the ocean and seeing what happens. So let's make that make sense. Essentially, we want the pH to be stable like it was in the past, but after continued emissions, our ocean has acidified. So with alkalinity enhancement, we could restabilize our waters and absorb atmospheric carbon. We conducted 9 3-day exposure trials to try to find out what the ecological consequences are relating to OAE. Each trial consisted of a preparation day, bubble day, plating day, and 3 subsequent observation days. So here's the problem. Alkalinity enhancement literally changes the chemistry of our oceans, and that could have ecological disruption, it could disrupt food chains, or even in some cases release toxic metals into the water. Even with aggressive emission cuts, conventional mitigation will not be enough. In order to counteract the emitting technologies and to meet the 2 degrees Celsius global warming goal, we need some degree of marine carbon dioxide removal to counteract and bring that balance. So here's the trade-off. Ocean alkalinity enhancement has unforeseen consequences that need to be weighed against the cost of not addressing ocean acidification, or in this case, global warming. We studied Dungeness crab zoea specifically for a couple different reasons. Zoea are the baby crabs up here, by the way. The first reason is that they are important for their tribal, ecological, and commercial value. Second is that they are in the early stages of the crab life cycle, and this is important for population health as well as ecosystem stability. So at this stage, they are really small, free-floating organisms that go through the water column. They look like little shrimps, I would say, with a spike on their head and on their nose, which is by far my favorite part. But more importantly, they are sensitive to pH shifts, which makes them an excellent indicator species, which essentially means that they reflect the health of the ocean really well. Now, in support of this species and also in advancing OAE studies, I had to ask myself 2 critical questions. 1, how much can we alter the chemistry of our oceans before it threatens marine life? And 2, do the benefits outweigh the risks in ocean alkalinity enhancement? To support our trials, I conducted a literature review on the ecological damage related to OAE. What I found was that at increased levels of alkalinity, it would sometimes have increased rates of mortality or, in some cases, neutral or even positive effects. So here's the deal with MCDR and OAE. These are nuanced innovations. However, we do know that they affect different species differently and the same species at different life stages. While researching the albeit limited studies out there, I found some things that could maximize the efficiency of this. The first is that timing matters. Seasonal deployment of ocean alkalinity enhancement could give scientists the ecological context they need in order to prevent harm. And 2, we need to slow the dilution rate of our alkaline material. Controlling this can allow scientists to prevent harm to those species that could be exposed to really rapid change in pH. To close, I want to leave you with this. MCDR and ocean alkalinity enhancement are crucial innovations that can have impact on global warming and ocean acidification. However, more research is needed to understand the ecological disruption that's related before any larger projects can take off. So, if we want to imagine a future where the ocean helps us undo the damage we've done to the atmosphere, we need to support bold innovations, solutions, and climate advocacy. Yeah, that's it. Real quickly, I would like to thank my site supervisor, Paul, my faculty supervisor, Chris, my amazing POE cohort, and my amazing internship partner, Chloe. Thank you for listening. Yes. So for those of you guys who didn't hear, the question was, what is your favorite part about this whole process, essentially? And I had a blast doing this internship. Being like really involved and hands-on in such an innovative science is really, I appreciate that a lot. But also, I got a really big kick out of hanging out with my research team and learning about what they're doing as we are staring at these baby crabs, hundreds of them through the microscope. But it was really fun. Yeah. Ooh, okay. So for those of you guys who didn't hear, the question was, what is your personal opinion on MCDR? And before I answer that, I want to say that one of the main things I want people to understand is that this is a nuanced innovation. There are pros and cons that are pretty valid on either side. What I would say is that this should be a case-by-case basis. When I mentioned seasonality earlier, that could mean, or that could allow scientists to actually hone in to get the most bang for their buck in carbon absorption, depending on, seasonality affects temperature, and that relates to pH. But yeah, thank you for the question. Oh.
Remind everyone that these presentations are very short. We don't have a lot of time for questions during the session, but I would encourage you to find Jacob, find Kendra at the break, and you can ask your additional questions then at the intermission. I want to move on to our next presenter. We're going to stay on the topic right now with our next presenter, Chloe Jasmine. Chloe is an environmental studies major and a minor in public policy. She is a multi-Dean's List recipient, and she made the annual Dean's List for her entire senior year, 24-25. After graduating here in a couple of weeks, she's headed to law school to study environmental law at the University of Montana on a full ride scholarship. Chloe has been very busy during her time here. She studied abroad in the Peruvian rainforest. She worked as a community leader for UW's family housing. She was selected as a 2022 Marine Geosciences Education and Oceanographic Discovery Scholar, and she raised a child. Now that's Julie in the house. He's sort of the unofficial mascot right next to Angry Dave. The title of Chloe's presentation, Before We Engineer the Ocean, Reimagining Community Engagement in Marine Carbon Dioxide. Her host organization was NOAA Fisheries, where she also worked with Paul McElhaney and her faculty advisor on campus, with Scott Montgomery from the Jackson School of International Studies. Let's give it up for Chloe.
All right. Oops, I already messed it up. There we go. That's giving you guys a little preview. Okay. Scientists are proposing a radical idea, engineering the ocean to help fight climate change. But when decisions are made about the ocean, who gets to ask questions, raise concerns, or help shape the future of our planet? While it might sound sci-fi, researchers are exploring ways to mitigate climate change through marine carbon dioxide removal, or MCDR. MCDR is a field of geoengineering research that aims to pull more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. As my co-intern Jacob mentioned, a promising method of MCDR is ocean alkalinity enhancement, or OAE, which involves adding alkaline materials like sodium hydroxide to seawater, making the water less acidic and more capable of absorbing CO2 from the air. During my internship at NOAA, we ran OAE lab trials to test how Dungeness crab zoea respond to sodium hydroxide. I saw how small shifts in ocean chemistry can have big impacts on marine species that coastal communities depend on. This led me to wonder about the role of community voices in MCDR projects. I combined my internship experience with independent research to ask, how can community engagement in marine carbon dioxide removal be improved? First, I researched the permitting process for MCDR. In the US, field trials must be approved for permits, such as the Marine Protection, Research, and Sanctuaries Act, alongside agency and tribal consultations and public comment periods. To gauge public opinion on MCDR, I analyzed 247 public comments from 2 major OAE field trials in the United States, the Loch Ness Project in the Gulf of Maine and Project Macoma in Port Angeles, Washington. At first glance, the comments appeared to reflect a majority of public support. The light blue represents the percentage of comments in support of each project, while the dark blue represents the percentage opposed. These results really surprised me, so I went on to further categorize each commenter by their self-identified stakeholder group, where comments from community members were overall more likely to express concerns or outright opposition between both projects. I found that the stakeholder groups most resistant to MCDR were community members, environmental nonprofits, and fisheries, while scientists, academics, MCDR affiliates, and state and local agencies were most supportive. I also found that risks to marine ecosystems, economic impacts on fisheries, and real fear of long-term unknowns were the most common concerns of community members opposed to these trials. But what stood out even more were the voices missing altogether. In both project areas, there are many indigenous tribes with ties to these coastal waters. Yet in the public record, I found no comments from tribe members. And for the Loch Ness project, no tribal consultation was completed. To dig deeper, I interviewed several MCDR experts where they all agreed. Community engagement is really important. Participant Brad Warren put it simply, stating, "People are as essential as the natural science dimension. If you fail to bring them in, the project fails." Unfortunately, there are no guidelines for community engagement in MCDR. Despite outreach efforts, public opposition has remained high, suggesting that current developer-led engagement strategies aren't working. To move forward, I suggest a justice-based framework for community engagement that recognizes the needs, histories, and rights of communities. This means implementing 3 things: participatory, distributive, and restorative justice. Participatory justice means giving communities real influence through early listening sessions, extended comment periods, community advisory boards, plain language project summaries, and roles as research collaborators. Distributive justice means sharing risks and benefits equitably through local jobs and training programs within MCDR projects, transparent risk analysis, and community control over data collected in local waters. Restorative justice means righting past wrongs through understanding environmental histories, integrating indigenous knowledge, and advocating for climate reparations and decarbonization. Although these suggestions aren't comprehensive, I hope to inspire MCDR developers and regulators to reimagine their approach to engagement. So, before we engineer the ocean, we must ensure that justice guides MCDR research for a scientifically sound and socially responsible future. I'd like to thank my site supervisor, Paul, and advisor, Scott, my friends and family, Jacob, Kip, and Mike at NOAA, the 2025 POE cohort, Chris Mantegna, the Dungeness Crabzoia, rest in peace, my amazing POE professors, and my son, Jude. Thank you all so much for your support. I love you.
Good answer his question, please.
Oh, I was just wondering, what was your favorite part of the internship?
To be done. All right. Thank you so much for your question. If you didn't hear in the back, the question was, what was my favorite part of my internship? And while I really, really loved getting lab experience and experience in chemistry and learning about MCDR and all of these things that felt really overwhelming at first, truthfully, one of my favorite experiences throughout the entire internship had nothing to do with our lab work at all. As you can see here in this photo of me and our coworker Kip, and that's my co-intern Jacob there, we all got together along with our site supervisor and attended the Stand Up for Science rally in downtown Seattle. And I think now more than ever, it was really powerful to just get to see everyone come together on behalf of science and stand up for what they believe in and what is right. Thank you.
Choice. Your choice. All right, everybody. Well, that was fun. Our next presenter is we're moving away from the ocean now, away from the ocean. And now, imagine we're in a forest. Our next presenter is Jacob Jones. Jacob, look, I gotta tell you, Jacob brought me flowers. So Jacob is an environmental studies major, and he's graduating in just 10 days, right? So June 2025. In addition to wrestling with important environmental issues, Jacob is an actual wrestler. He's a full-time NCWA Wrestling Nationals competitor. How about that? Today, Jacob will be answering the question, why? Of course, if you have additional questions, you can pin him down at the break. Oh! All right. So, Jacob was in Northwest Natural Resource Group, where his site supervisor was Jalma. His faculty advisor is our very own Monica Muscle, the POE director and professor in the School of Environmental Forest Sciences. At this point, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to turn it over to Jacob. Let's give it a listen.
Raise your hand with me if you've heard of ecological forestry. Now keep your hand up if you've heard of the ethic of ecological forestry. Believe it or not, ecoforestry is both a management practice and an ethical ideology. The science of ecoforestry is very well developed. There's a lot of literature on it. It's the idea that you need to keep a forest intact and healthy while still being able to produce timber. Unfortunately, the ethics, I said, of ecoforestry are not very well developed. There's not a lot of literature about it and not a lot of scientific discussion about what the ethics are. This is a problem because it makes it hard to introduce it to the public, and it also leads to ambiguity about what ecoforestry is. Ethics are the reason we do things, and as such, I wanted to ask, what exactly is this ethic of ecoforestry? I interned with Northwest Natural Resource Group, an organization that does ecological forestry treatments and works with local landowners. Me and my co-intern, Mateo, traveled around the state, visiting different places that have been ecologically thinned. Ecological thinning is a type of ecoforestry where some of the trees are removed to allow the others more room and space to grow. We took different core samples and other samples from the sites to determine how well the forest had recovered from the thinning process, as well as how well they grew. So in this process, we were able to work with a lot of different forestry landowners, a lot of people that own different forests and manage them ecologically. And in doing so, we were able to have a lot of informal conversations with them, as well as conducting formal interviews, observing how they did ecoforestry, and I was also conducted an extensive literature review on the co-development of ethics and ecology in the US. So here's what I found in a nutshell. Essentially, it's not about the money. It's forestry for the forest. It's rooted in ecology. And it's a long-term stewardship ethic that includes multiple generations. Let's break it down. Ecoforestry is not about the money. Only 14% of surveyed landowners said they did ecoforestry primarily for profit. This is reflected by the interviews I conducted, in which all of the people I talked to didn't do ecoforestry for the money. So why do people do ecoforestry? Well, as I mentioned, it's forestry for the forest. Over 2/3 of landowners cite forest health as the primary reason why they do ecological forestry. This was backed up by the interviews I conducted. All the people I talked to cared deeply about their forest and wanted it to be healthy for the long term. But ecological forestry is fundamentally rooted in ecology. Oh, sorry, I skipped one. As Tony Dosher said, we really wanted to save the trees. We felt really strongly about that. This is reflective in all of the interviews I conducted. But ecological forestry is fundamentally rooted in ecology, and those that conduct it know that it is essential for the soil, water, air, and biodiversity health. But trees live a long time, and so do forests. As such, ecoforestry is a multi-generational process. And as John Yoakum said, what happens when your own children don't want to conduct ecoforestry anymore? That is why instilling this ethic of ecological forestry is so essential. It's important to ensure the next generations continue the care of their forests in this manner. So, what is this ethic? Based off the research I conducted, I determined that the ethic of ecoforestry is a long-term stewardship ethic of science-based altruism towards the forest itself as an entity with the right to exist and be healthy. So what does this mean? Essentially, it's the idea that forests don't just need to be a resource to be extracted. It's a reciprocal relationship between humanity and forests that they can both benefit. Forests can be healthy, and they can produce timber and other benefits for humanity. So what can you do? Ethics are the foundation of law. And as such, having ethical discussion on how we should be managing our land is the first step in determining policy on how we should manage them. If you want to support ecological forestry, you can buy ecologically certified wood. Organizations like the Forestry Stewardship Council certify that wood is produced in an ecological and ethical manner. Finally, in this time of unprecedented resource extraction, as our very national parks are threatened with deforestation, I ask you, talk to your friends, your family, your senator about how would you like your forest to be managed. I'd like to thank my family, my friends, and all my Capstone cohorts, and as well as my site supervisor and my academic advisor. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Yes. For those that, excellent question. For those that didn't hear, the question was, how does my research interplay with the wildfire risk and forest management that we face? Am I correct? So I didn't specifically research wildfire management, but I do know that ecological thinning and the process of ecological forestry does account for wildfires as well. It does include burns, and it does leave some trees to be a part of habitat, but having healthy, balanced forests and not monocultures helps reduce the wildfires. Having like tree farms where they're all the same tree, they're evenly spaced, if one tree catches, they all catch. If you have healthy old growth mixed with young growth, it's a nice mix of forest, it might catch fire, but it won't all burn down and it's less likely to spread. Any other questions? Yeah. My favorite site, sorry, the question was, what was my favorite site to visit? My favorite site to visit was called Two Frog Bog. It actually had the most rotted trees out of any of the sites, and I was scared a tree was gonna fall on me. But it was a really cool site, and and the owners were really awesome, and they were kind of hippies and they were really chill. And like we were just like, and they showed us like all the stuff. Every time a tree would fall, they would just like make something out of it, and their entire like area was just made out of trees that had fallen, and they just made stuff out of it. It was really cool. Anyway, thank you.
All right. Now we're gonna move from the forest into the fields. Our next presenter is CJ Applegate. It's so right for a farm pun. Anyway, CJ is an environmental studies major and a drama performance minor. She's graduating in 10 days, I think. CJ has been on the dean's list every quarter she's been here at the University of Washington. She'll graduate magna cum laude. This summer, she will continue working with her host organization, Organic Farm School, to implement some of the ideas she's about to share with us. And she wanted me to point out that she's very excited to share. The title of her presentation is Fueling Farmers, the Future is Regenerative. Her host organization was the Organic Farm School, where her site supervisor was Walt Blackford and Judy Feldman, and her faculty advisor was Eli Wheat, our very own Eli Wheat from the program on environment. Applegate Wheat, I miss so many good opportunities. Let's give it up for CJ.
I'm green. Can everybody hear me? Was a good time for a Johnny Appleseed pun, but I'll let it go. All right, I'm going to start things off by asking everybody in the audience to close their eyes and picture what they imagine the average farmer looks like and what kind of land they're on. Now, me personally, I picture someone pretty young, pretty strong, on a nice, lush, densely filled landscape. Go ahead and open your eyes. Actually, the average farm kind of looks something like this image. That's pretty dry, pretty brown, and that's unfortunate. And that's because of something in the United States called conventional agriculture, which is the dominant form of agriculture in the US. So alternative forms like regenerative or organic farming are necessary to rise in popularity to mitigate this. Additionally, the average farmer is 57 years old. That's pretty close to retirement. So it's necessary that we have a new generation of farmers step in and fill the shoes of those that are nearing retirement. This ties in directly with my internship at the Organic Farm School on Whidbey Island. They are a nonprofit and they aim to educate the next generation of organic community scale farmers. With them, I did a lot of recruitment work as well as some on-site farm work. And naturally, they have a vested interest in what motivates young farmers to farm, which led directly into my research questions. What hesitations did current regenerative and organic farmers have about their career? And what motivated them to pursue this field despite these hesitations that they had? In order to answer these questions, I utilized 3 different streams of research. I asked additional interview questions of those that were alumni at OFS, still working in organic or regenerative farming. I surveyed local organic and regenerative farmers, and I also conducted a comprehensive literature review for broader industry trends. And I found 3 main hesitations that farmers face. The first is income, the second is a perceived lack of land availability, and the third is the challenging nature of the job. And this can refer to anything from seasonality to the literal physical strain that comes with a job like farming. Regarding income, it was the #1 reason cited by both interview and survey respondents as their biggest hesitation for this career. Additionally, those surveyed also said that they did not believe the positive impacts of their job were enough to overcome the financial burdens. Regarding land availability, it's important to note that those at OFS did not cite this as a concern, but OFS does a great job in placing farmers on land to work afterwards. But it was tied as a #1 concern with income for those I surveyed. Additionally, I've selected a quote for the challenging nature of the job from an alumni from the class of 2020 at OFS. She says here, "I don't see myself having the physical resources to buy a large farm and work on it for 20 years to yield profits." So there's 2 kind of issues with the challenging nature of the job represented here. But on the bright side, there are several motivations that farmers had that motivated them to keep farming: environmentalism, training, personal values, and alternative income. Regarding environmentalism, it was the #1 reason cited by interview subjects for the reason that they decided to continue farming. It was mentioned in 6 out of 14 of our interview responses. Additionally, it was mentioned a number of times in the free response section of my surveys. Regarding training, 100% of OFS alumni would recommend a program like OFS to prospective farmers. Additionally, 9 out of 14 of those that I surveyed stated that they believed that hands-on, in-person training is essential for a career in regenerative or organic agriculture. Regarding personal values, this is a broader section and it represents things like community, healthy food systems, and additional things regarding the health of the specific benefits of organic or regenerative agriculture, and this was mentioned a number of times in both interviews and surveys. Lastly, for alternative income, I've selected a quote from an anonymous survey response in the free response section that says, the reason that they still work in regenerative or organic farming is that they have saved money over a career of 25 years and has a husband who can pay for their medical benefits and has a full-time job as well. So those were a lot of facts. What do we need going forward? Farmers need livable wages, access to land, and access to training. One way to increase wages for farmers would be to define regenerative agriculture. Currently, it has no definition. Organic farming has a certification process and a standard. If you were to do that with regenerative ag, then farmers could make more money. Additionally, access to land is related to financial mobility. If farmers were able to make more, they would be able to buy more land. And lastly, if training were treated like any other trade, like farming is, it would be widely accessible across the United States. So what's next? Those were 3 very broad suggestions. Start small. I recommend that you support local organic and regenerative farmers by buying their yields and also voting for representatives that believe in the small farmer. At the end of the day, we all eat. We're all participants in the agricultural sector, whether we're aware of it or not. And it is our job to start supporting those small, local, organic, and regenerative farmers so that we can have my vision of a farmer that I mentioned here at the beginning. Special thank you to my site supervisors, Walt Blackford and Judy Feldman, my faculty advisor, Dr. Eli Wheat, all of my friends and family for listening to me talk about farming for an entire year. Thank you. And for all of you for listening. If you have additional questions, go ahead and hit me up on LinkedIn. Or ask me a couple questions now. Yes.
Regenerative agriculture has no definition, but what makes it different from organic agriculture?
Wow, that's a fantastic question. The question was essentially, what makes regenerative agriculture different from organic? This is a bit of a challenging question because, as I said, regenerative agriculture has no formal definition. So if you were going by a farm-by-farm basis, it would be hard to define. However, what I would say is regenerative agriculture is like organic but more. Organic focuses on a lack of use of pesticides and things like crop rotation. Regenerative kind of takes it to the next level. They use things like no-till. So it's just practices beyond organic's scope. Any other questions? Yes. This is a fantastic question. You asked if I plan on farming. The answer is no. I love my time at the organic farm school, and some of the time that I spent on site, I honestly found far more valuable than the work I was doing recruiting, just because that connection to the food system I think is essential for everyone. However, the giant barriers that I just mentioned here are big reasons why I would not get involved in the career and why we need action now.
Right, everybody. Gonna move on to our next presenter. The next presenter is Eliza Wyman. Eliza is a double major in environmental studies and education, communities, and organizations. Turns out she's also an employee at the UW Care Garage. I don't know why I didn't know that. I learned today, though, one thing I did learn today is this summer she is fleeing Seattle and she's heading to Iceland to be a farmer. Can't do it here, you can do it in Iceland. So over the past year, she's been working with an organization called Braided River, the publisher and a creator of visually driven multimedia advocacy. And this has sparked a deep interest in both marketing and communication. This evening, we'll get to hear about some of the ideas she's been thinking about deeply during her time in our internship. The title of her presentation is Mother Earth, Feminizing the Environment. Her host organization was Braided River. Her site supervisor there was Helen Chirillo, and her faculty advisor from campus was Rubna of the program on the environment. Let's give it up for Eliza.
All right, everyone, let's talk about Mother Earth. But before I begin, I'd like to make space for folks to leave or do whatever they see fit if discussions of gender-based violence would be triggering. Now, raise your hand if you've used the phrases Mother Earth, Mother Nature, or something similar. As you can see, feminization is a common way to reference the environment, but its frequency of use doesn't mean this language is inherently effective. This presentation aims to explore the use of gendered language in environmental topics and its relationship to natural resource management, climate change, and gender-based violence. Gendered language influences our perceptions, fluctuates based on audience and expectations, and may result in judging others' capabilities. When presented as a metaphor in environmental topics, we view the natural world through a feminine lens. I explored this topic with two research questions in mind. How and why does gendered language appear in environmental communications? And how does the use of gendered language in nature discourse relate to the exploitation of natural resources and its broader climate change implications? I've had the privilege of interning as outreach intern for Braided River, a 501c3 nonprofit publisher, since February of 2024 as part of my capstone experience. Braided River produces photography books and multimedia advocacy campaigns in community to draw attention to critical ecosystems and inspire climate action. In this role, I helped manage social media accounts, including the Instagram and Facebook, monthly e-newsletter, blog, and website. I conducted research for inclusion in Guardians of Life and social media analytics on Colorado River presence for Grant Report. My internship experience sparked my curiosity for language selection in environmental discourse. So, in addition to my role as outreach intern, I performed independent research on the role of gendered language in nature discourse. I performed a thorough literature review of around 15 scholarly sources and multiple art pieces from the UW Library's online database and Google Scholar to reflect on my research questions. I found that gendered language commonly presents as metaphors in environmental discourse and persists because of cultural significance. Indigenous people tend to feminize the environment because they deem themselves as part of the land, whereas Western society feminizes the earth as a romanticization of its extractive and mysterious qualities. Differences in relationality can be attributed to gender-based differences in nature considerations. This graph reflects a literature review of 46 sources on Indigenous and local values of nature. 57% found gender-specific differences in nature considerations. Through the use of gendered metaphors, we can compare feminine experiences with gender-based violence to the exploitation of natural resources. This comparison dates back to the beginning of America's colonization through the exploitation of native topographies with feminine associations. By feminizing the environment, women are associated with the wild and unpredictable descriptions of nature, both needing conquering and taming, as well as nurturing to fit Western culture's desired mold. Scholars argue that if we feminize the environment while deeming it as sacred, then polluting it is an act of violating the virgin. Once violated, both women and land are not respected. These human nature hierarchies depict that the Western feminization of the environment does not capture our interdependence with the natural world. We are downplaying humanity's impact on the climate. But why does this all matter? It should be no surprise that the exploitation of natural resources worsens climate change, but the use of gendered language in environmental topics is a circular issue given the positive association between climate change and gender-based violence. One study found gender-based violence increased from 4.2 to 8.3% following Hurricane Katrina. Another study on those internally displaced found sexual and intimate partner violence did not return to baseline. Increased gender-based violence is not exclusive to hurricanes or the global north. Of 30 women interviewed after the Black Saturday bushfires in Australia, 17 reported experiencing violence. We must reevaluate our human-nature relationships and our use of gendered language in environmental contexts. Some scholars suggest a gender-neutral path forward that embraces nature's fluidity and constant changes, if we choose to humanize the environment at all. However, further research must be done on solutions that promote ecological and gender justice, not the normalization of abuse. Thank you to the Braided River team and Lubna Alzaro, my faculty advisor, for guiding me through the capstone process, and to my family and friends for your unwavering support. All right, and I'd like to open the room up to questions. Yes. Great question. The question for anyone who didn't hear was, why are rates of gender-based violence increasing with climate change? There are a few reasons behind this. One, primarily in the global south, climate change is happening over time, and this increases resource scarcity. This resource scarcity forces women and girls to travel longer distances to complete daily tasks like gathering food and water. This exposure to new landscapes and communities increases their vulnerability. And right there. Thank you. The question was, why do Indigenous people deem themselves as part of the land? Again, there are multiple explanations for this. One of them is the shared reproductive characteristics between women and the natural world. And the second is that Indigenous people tend to live more in reciprocity with the natural world than Western society.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you, everybody, for your continued exuberance and attention during our talks. We have one more talk in this session before we have our intermission. Our last speaker in session A is Emma Freeman. Emma is an environmental studies major, minoring in American Indian Studies. And like others in this session, she's graduating in just about 10 days. So congratulations to Emma there. Emma is in leadership in the organization Resist USA-led War, Seattle. And as you will see from today's presentation, has a passion for social justice, which she weaves together with her interest in nature and the environment. The title of her presentation rather, is From Here to There, Art as a Way of Interrelating Connection to Nature with Migrant Experiences. Her host organization was Partner in Employment, where she worked with Emily Castillo, and her faculty advisor was somewhere here, right there, our very own Rebecca. So without further ado, let's go ahead and welcome.
I can see it, yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Get out of here. Okay, thanks for sticking through, y'all. So in 2023, 120 million people were displaced due to war, economic challenges, and natural disasters. This rate is increasing alongside global rising inequality and climate change. And when people leave their lands, they often leave behind their connections to nature and place, connections that are deeply tied to culture and identity. This can lead to feelings of isolation or feeling neither here nor there. Environmental restoration has the ability to not only heal ecosystems, but also reconnect people with nature and form place-based attachments that can be especially important for those who are rebuilding their lives. However, there's a research gap. I and Inspector Clouseau could not find any research that investigated how restoration impacts migrants' connections to nature. So I interned with Partner in Employment. They help facilitate paid job training programs for immigrants and refugees in South King County. And I helped facilitate their environmental restoration job training program this past spring. And in researching how to best facilitate environmental education, I found that art can be very effective in helping students make complex connections and actually reimagine their role in their ecosystems. So I asked 3 questions. How does environmental restoration shape migrants' connection to nature? How does this compare to connections made in their home countries? And how can these be expressed through art? So we started by looking at 2 paintings by Colombian American artist Maria Berrio that explore migration and nature. And then each 12 participants made their own artwork. I also interviewed 12 participants asking about their connections to nature locally and abroad, and how these were expressed in their collages. In the results, everyone who I talked to showed an increased connection to nature because of the restoration work. Like Narges, who said, "I feel like I'm helping nature, the park, the land, and it gives me good feelings." I also expected folks to have strong connections to nature in their home countries, but many shared that they were disconnected due to systemic barriers, and instead used photos of built environments like Ahmad. However, many used photos of natural environments of both locally and abroad in their collages, and 2 even used their collages to tell their parents' migration story through landscape itself, like Martha, who represented the desert of northern Mexico, as well as Faisal, who shared how his parents flew from Somalia to the United States. He also explained that when he looks into the sky, he always thinks of his parents' story, and that to him, birds and the sky symbolize freedom. Emilio connected his parents' roots to farming in Mexico with places in the Pacific Northwest, and he expressed his emerging identity as a steward through this message to himself that our earth is worth saving. I was especially motivated by folks who saw themselves as international restorationists, such as Mushtaba, who said that he wished he got the chance to work in Afghanistan and learn the names of plants there. So in conclusion, environmental restoration and ecological knowledge increased connections that also improved self-esteem and well-being, and art helped bridge these gaps and reform identity. And in a world where militarism, climate change, and corporate exploitation are escalating each year, the need for internationalist environmentalism is ever more crucial. However, this work is difficult while migrant rights are actively under attack. Currently, 1,500 people are detained at the Northwest Detention Center in Tacoma, which is famous for abuse and is built on top of a Superfund site. However, last week, I was able to go there and see Auntie Lynn, a UW worker and green card holder, freed after 3 months in detention due to local grassroots organizing. So please follow International Migrants Alliance Pacific Northwest and heed more calls to action so that we can free more of our neighbors and friends who are in detention. And I would like to thank the lands and the waters that hold me, the POE program that holds me, my friends and family, Lubna, Emmeline, and Claire, and the environmental team, all the wonderful work they do at Partner in Employment, and my organizing community for fighting for a future where no one is forced to migrate. Okay. Are there any questions? Yes. That's a great question. The question was, why did I choose collage as the art form to have the students participate with? I did a collage party for my birthday 2 years ago, and it was so much fun, and like seeing how everyone put together their collages was really an insight into like their mind and how it works. I also think it's a really accessible form of art because instead of having a really clear vision of what you want and then being disappointed because drawing is hard, like it's easier to just find pictures that you resonate with and then have the story kind of come through. And then is there another question? Yeah? That's a good question. So the question is, did I notice any correlation with age and attitudes towards nature? I would say no. There was the age range for the program was 16 to 23, 22, 23. And I was surprised some of the students who had like the most eloquent and insightful reflections were in high school. I will say that there was some language barrier that was overcome through having a translator, someone on the team who can translate for Farsi, speak through. But I think that instead, like, it's just kind of hard to really truly express yourself when you're not, when there is that language barrier. So yeah, I want to learn Farsi.
All right, everybody, that was our last presentation for session A. We have just a very brief break before we start session B. I'd like to try to stay on time, but I recognize that that's only 4 minutes from now. So how about we start back up at 6:35, okay? 6:35. Please join me back here promptly at 6:35. Thank you for a great session. I can't wait for the next one. Take baby back over there. I'm sure somebody wants baby. Somebody misses baby. Thank you. What are you doing up here, buddy? You want to be near baby? Baby's watching. I think he's painted like the last airbender. If you're familiar with the airbender. The last airbender? Oh, it's like a. Not my generation. Yeah, probably. Not my generation. Hey, I heard my name. Is my backpack still going strong? It is. Also, it's helping other duct tape. Yeah, right. I think it was when they gave it to me, but. But the parts that needle really swing, maybe it's not. Yeah, good. Also, because my backpack, so when the backpack, he carried all this stuff. Perfect, yeah. He doesn't have a good service. Not loop highway. I've been there once. Yeah, it's mine. Yeah, I think Claire is. Yeah, I'm seeing it. Right, are we ready to be next up? See, next one. After again, I'm reading. All right, welcome back, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the start of session B of the Spring 2025 Capstone Symposium Program on the Environment. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around for session B. Realizing it's kind of humid in here after walking outside. We're all breathing too much. All right, so for those of you just joining us rather, my name is Sean McDonald. I'm the capstone instructor for the program on the environment. Here to facilitate tonight's discussion and wonderful presentations on the culminating experience within the program on the environment. We're going to just jump right into session B. The second session spans a range of topics. We'll start with some circularity and then some sustainability, and then we'll end up the session with some policy and politics. So there's going to be something for everyone in this session, very, very different from our first session. So it's kind of exciting to see something new. Our first presenter in this session is Alex Johnson. Alex is hiding over this morning. Alex Johnson. Alex is a double major in environmental studies and political science. He's pursuing departmental honors, and he will graduate with the rest of the class in just about 10 days' time. But he's not going far because in the fall, Alex will be entering the University of Washington School of Law to pursue his JD with a concentration in environmental law. So it's safe to say he's not throwing in the towel Yes, yeah. The title of his presentation, Lengthening Linen Longevity. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Okay. Starting over. The title of his presentation, Lengthening Linen Longevity, How the Barriers to Hotel Textile Recycling Can Be Overcome. His host organization was the Washington State University Textile Team, no judgment. Site supervisor was Dr. Patricia Townsend, and his faculty advisor from here on campus, Eli Wheat from the Program on the Environment. Let's give it up for our... All right.
Okay. Welcome back from the break, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. So first, by a show of hands, who here acts more sustainably while traveling? Do you reuse your towels more often, or do you try to throw away less garbage? Okay, thank you. Let's keep this in mind for the end. Now, I want to talk about the problem, the growing problem of textile waste. In the United States, year over year, we produce more textile waste, and overwhelmingly this waste will end up in landfills. In King County, over 90% of our textile waste will end up in landfills. Cotton textile waste in particular, which is what I want to focus on, has the ability to be recycled, yet when it'll enter landfills, it'll rot and pollute the surrounding landscape. A key player in this issue are hotels. Globally, the hospitality industry produces 6,000 tons of textile waste. However, hotels can also be a solution. They're a centralized global business that produces uniform textile waste in the form of white sheets and white towels, and yet they produce this waste because any stain or imperfection means they have to throw them away. But this leads to my research question. What barriers exist, if any, that prevent hotels from participating in a cotton textile recycling supply chain? To help answer this question, I interned with the Washington State University textile team, wherein I helped the team create a literature review of global textile recycling supply chains. And as the team themselves seeks to create that supply chain from hotels to recycling textiles, I helped the team create a prototype business plan to present to hotels about this initiative. To help create the plan, I interviewed hoteliers in the Seattle Bellevue area, conducted semi-structured interviews with questions based on 4 categories of barriers that I assumed the hotels face. There were economic questions, asking if any kind of participation that had a fee would be a barrier, or logistical questions, asking if any kind of manpower or time increase to participate would stop the hotel. Important liability questions, asking if there were any legal problems with the hotel giving away branded textiles for free. And finally, perception questions, asking if, especially for higher-end or ritzy hotels, if they might believe their clientele would view the location more negatively should it participate. To graph my responses, I created a bar graph, where on the left side, you'll be able to see the categories of questions and barriers that I asked about. And on the right side, you'll see the degree to responses that the hoteliers gave, ranging from this topic posing a significant barrier to this topic not posing any kind of barrier at all. What you will be able to see from the results is that by far, most of the topics did not pose any kind of barrier for the hotels. And these are extremely encouraging results and show that there is a great willingness in the hospitality industry to participate in this type of initiative. There were a couple problematic areas, though, in terms of any kind of cost or fee associated with participating, that would be a barrier, or if the hotel were to resell recycled material back at their own location. Some of the example responses I received discussed how, from a logistics standpoint, the hotels already separate textiles to either be reused in rooms or thrown away. And if instead of throwing them away, they can just recycle them, that's perfect. Additionally, from a liability standpoint, all the hoteliers simply wanted someone to take the textiles to reuse them because they didn't like throwing them away themselves. This led to my solution, a proposed cotton textile recycling action plan. This plan necessitates some kind of third party, like the WSU textile team, to facilitate the actions of donating textiles from hotels to be reused, and it needs to be free from the perspective of hotels. And I believe this can be achieved through a combination of government grants and the third party being able to resell the recycled material. It'll start with a third party meeting with hotels and establishing a business relationship. It can also include the third party providing some kind of material to help the hotel recycle, such as a reciprocal for the textiles to be placed in. Next, the hotel will operate as normal, and anytime they would throw away a textile, it'll instead be placed in that reciprocal or something similar. Then, at regular intervals, the third party will come to the hotel and pick up those textiles, much like a garbage or recycling truck would. Finally, the third party will take those textiles to their own facility to sort them, to either reuse as is or recycle them chemically or mechanically. And any kind of bureaucratic work when it comes to tax breaks or benefits will be dealt with there. Hotels love these sustainability initiatives, especially for corporate contracts, which are a key part of hotel revenue, and this could be an example of a new one. Now, after learning all that, will you act more sustainably while traveling? Will you try to reuse your towel more or avoid staining it since you know it'll often just be thrown away? Or if you wish, when you travel and go to a hotel, you can look at their website and see the sustainability initiatives that they have listed there. I would like to thank the WSU Textile team, my host organization, my site supervisor, Dr. Patricia Townsend, my faculty advisor, Dr. Eli Wheat, and the 9 hoteliers who took time out of the day to interview with me. Thank you. All right, any questions? You over there? Thank you. That's a wonderful question. Thank you so much. The question, if you didn't hear, was why isn't there a common textile recycling supply chain already like we have for aluminum or glass? And the biggest reason is that when you recycle cotton, it significantly lowers the quality, and that causes any kind of reuse material or options to be significantly reduced. However, the WSU textile team has recently developed a new chemical recycling method that preserves a lot of the integrity of the cotton fibers. And this is part of the reason that we wanted to start this initiative, because now we have that option to start that supply chain. Any other questions? Right there. Thank you for that question. The question was, what kind of products would this recycled textile be turned into? And would it be for consumers or just for the hotels? The biggest thing that I saw in the literature was that a lot of times tote bags or tablecloths or not very advanced types of products would be the new type of recycled material, but that's coming from a cotton product that was previously recycled with old methods that reduced their quality. And so I'd be curious to see in the future what new products we could create. As we saw in the results before though, hotels aren't keen on reselling the products at their own locations, so it would likely be straight to consumers. Okay.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Alex, for leading us off. Our next presenter in this session is Jenna Williamson. Jenna is a program environment major and a nutrition science minor. Jenna has been on the dean's list for 9 quarters. She's been a vegetarian for 15 years. I don't know. One of the formative experiences of Jenna's time at UW was a business and sustainability study abroad program in Berlin, where she helped startups create circular economy models and repurpose old rubber from tires into new products like phone cases and shoes. Now look at her capstone. Coincidence? I don't know. Title of her presentation, Funding a Sustainable Future, Tool Libraries and Circular Economy Nonprofit Organization. Her host organization was Seattle Economy, where her site supervisor was Josh Epstein. Her faculty advisor was our very own Christy Strauss. Is there a Christy Strauss in the house? There is a Strauss in the house. All right, let's give it up for Jenna.
Okay, let me just make sure everybody can hear me. Okay. As you all know, we are in the middle of a global climate emergency. A big cause of this crisis is the trash that we produce, as it contributes significantly to greenhouse gas emissions. Globally, over 2 billion tons of waste are produced each year, a figure that may double by 2050. All of this trash accumulates because of our current linear model, also known as the take, make, and dispose model. In this, we extract resources, use them briefly, and then throw them away, which creates a constant stream of waste that ends up in our landfills and in our environment. Although concerned environmentalists have come up with a new approach to consumerism, also known as the circular economy model, which focuses on reducing consumption, reusing goods, and recycling materials, which effectively overall reduces waste and promotes sustainability. What if, instead of buying an item and then throwing it away when you're done with it, you could simply borrow it from a library when you need it, or even learn to fix it yourself? That's the idea behind tool libraries, which offer a range of items from pressure washers to ice cream makers. Seattle Economy is a nonprofit organization founded in 2013 with 2 locations. It provides access to over 10,000 tools and items. They also have workshops on things such as sewing, woodworking, home energy improvements, and more. During my internship, I worked at the check-in and check-out desk where people would rent and return tools. During this, I helped customers, created memberships, and gave them information on upcoming classes. I also took on extra roles such as content creation for Seattle Economy's social media account. Although many nonprofits face ongoing financial challenges, this is due to the fact that they rely on donations and volunteer labor. Because of this, I joined the funding team to hire a consultant to build us a long-term sustainable funding strategy. This brings me to my research question. What are the essential steps and components in a successful funding strategy for circular economy nonprofit organizations? To answer this question, I first began by conducting informational interviews with professionals in nonprofit fundraising. I wanted to find the best practices for selecting a consultant. To do this, I created an interview guide with the best questions to find what to look for and what to avoid. One quote from these interviews was, "Ask for a strategic funding plan and a sample of their past work with clear deliverables," from Leanna Frick, a professional in nonprofit fundraising. This quote highlights how important it is to have a clear and actionable plan. Next, I developed a request for proposal that included our project's goals, budget, and timeline. I also researched local consultancies to send the RFP to. I also created an evaluation rubric to evaluate them on and interview questions for the finalists. After reviewing each consultant's proposals, we interviewed our top 3 choices. Common Great rose to the top as they scored a 96 out of 100 on the rubric. This is due to many factors such as their local sustainability experience. This brings me to my 5 key takeaways for a successful funding strategy, which answers my research question. These are capacity building, mission alignment, diverse funding streams, motivated donors, and clear success metrics. The first is capacity building. The plan used must be fit to the organization's size and its resources. For small nonprofits like Seattle Economy, this means reasonable and actionable steps that can realistically be implemented. For instance, a volunteer ran staff. Next is mission alignment. There must be a clear alignment between the consultant's values and the organization's mission. Expertise is simply not enough. For Seattle Economy, this means someone committed to sustainability and community resilience. Next is diversified funding streams, meaning multiple funding sources. Having only one funding source can leave the organization financially vulnerable. The strongest strategies combine sources from private grants, government funding, individual donors, memberships, sponsorships, and tool sales. Next is motivated donors. In order to motivate donors, you must focus on the mission and appeal to their values of sustainability. It's best to look at their interest and their previous giving history to effectively boost donor retention and responsiveness. Last is clear success metrics. While financial measurements may be helpful, non-monetary indicators can be even more meaningful. These indicators include donor retention rates, number of new donors, successful grant applications, and volunteer and member engagement. This research is incredibly important because this is what allows circular economy nonprofits to make an impact. It allows them to reduce waste and consumption while promoting reuse and climate resilience. Without financial sustainability, their mission cannot succeed. Thank you. I would like to thank my host organization, Seattle Economy, my site supervisor, Josh Epstein, my incredibly supportive mom and my friends, and lastly, Dylan the shop dog, who made every single shift more enjoyable. Okay. I would now like to open the floor for some questions from the audience. Yes? That is a great question. So the question was, how much are the memberships and how would you become a member? So as I mentioned before, Seattle Economy is a donation-based organization. The suggested donation is $60 for a year-long membership, although it is donation-based, so you can donate as much as you can, meaning that it's accessible for all income backgrounds. Also, you can volunteer and receive a free membership. Oh, back there? Great question. So the question was, what kind of content creation did I do for them? So I actually filmed a variety of videos, including a tour of the library to showcase what kind of tools we have, but also the different areas of the tool library, including the bike repair shop and our woodworking shop. I also filmed a unboxing video of different tools to showcase what kind of tools we have and also how to use them, which was great because it brought additional awareness to the library.
Sorry, y'all, doing some technical stuff here. Thank you so much for that, Jenna. Our next presenter in this section is Chance Hoppenrath. Chance is a program on the environment major and a philosophy minor. And like his classmates, he will be graduating UW in less than 2 weeks. Yeah. Chance is definitely a Renaissance man. Not only is he a certified lifeguard, but he's also the proud father of 2 cats who enjoys reading philosophy. Sounds a little bit like a dating profile, actually. But he's got a girlfriend. The title of Chance's presentation is Tools for Curiosity, Hands-on Sustainability, and the Fight Against Planned Obsolescence. His host organization was Transition Fidalgo, where his site supervisor was Eric Sheehan and Katrina White, and his faculty advisor was Hanji Wang, Department of Political Science, currently a postdoctoral research fellow at Boston University Global Film. Let's go ahead and give it up for Chance.
Is it working? All right. Here it goes. Planned obsolescence. It's the practice of reducing product lifespans in order to force you to buy products more often, and it's overall, companies like Apple use this pretty often, in case you haven't noticed. The cost of extraction of non-renewable resources, as we continue to kind of continue following these practices, oh gosh, I'm sorry. Repair cafes and community fixing forums allow people to share information and educate others on repairing their stuff. And this sounds like an opportunity to work with these people to change how we see our stuff. Through extensive literature review from a previous study by the Journal of Cleaner Production, unawareness, cost of diagnostics and repair, and lack of spare parts were identified as the most common reasons people chose not to repair. In 2011, Transition Fidalgo launched its first repair cafe, Fix-It Day, at the local Anacortes, Washington farmers market. Now, due to its success, the Fix-It Day team developed a study to create a local repair service for a year-round operation. Now, at a repair cafe, people bring in broken items to get them fixed by a team of skilled volunteers. Now, for my internship, I worked with my site supervisors to improve public perception on repair through this Fix-It Day service. I helped develop various nonprofit business models to streamline operations for year-round availability. This way, we could reach more people and show them the benefits of repair. That's one of them. The research I have done during my internship has raised the question, how would an increase in participation of repair service and products affect public knowledge and well-being? Okay. I surveyed Fix-It Day participants and the public on their perception of repair. The survey investigated finances, repair availability, and opinions on the current state of repair. There was 55 people in total that were surveyed, 5 of which, I wish it was a little more, were surveyed in person during the Fix-It Day, and 50 were surveyed online. This survey was done on Google Forms. It was anonymous, aside from some other factual information. Responses showed a common theme around 3 key factors. It goes people buying products that are affected by planned obsolescence, and then because of that, they don't really know how to repair them, so it ends up costing too much money to fix them. Now, results in my survey show that while 50.9% of respondents have had their stuff repaired, 92.7% would spend time developing repair skills if more information was available. I also saw an overwhelming number of respondents relate their desire to repair with wanting to get hands-on experience, feelings of accomplishment, and convenience. Intrinsic motivations like these are the reasons why we want to improve that ownership experience. Many people who also admitted to not knowing what to do when their stuff breaks, so it would make sense that being more knowledgeable about what you're buying would then make maintenance easier to improve the ownership experience. Using friends, family, repair cafes, and community fixing forums to share information is highly recommended for making these kind of decisions. Sharing is actually caring here, right? So people with a strong understanding of what they consume can quickly learn maintenance skills that extend the product lifespan. The knowledge allows you to make so much more out of your trinkets and gadgets, and this to me sounds like a far better way to spend your time. If product lifespans were increased, then that would require us to purchase and dispose of products less often. Naturally, this would lead to waste reduction. Thus, opting for repairability and focusing on disincentivizing companies from manufacturing stuff would make things a lot easier. Now, climate change looms over us all, and it might seem a little bit daunting at times, but the development of hands-on skills and putting the power in our hands to maintain our stuff brings us together to tackle planned obsolescence. Thank you. I'd like to thank my loving mom and dad right here, my girlfriend for making the trips to Anacortes a little bit more fun, and my friends and faculty to keep my head up throughout this process. Questions?
How many people at the Fix-A-Day, was it their first time going to that type of event?
Okay, so how many of the people were recurring people versus new people that were coming into the Fix-It Days? It's generally pretty spread out. There's definitely a lot of people that always come back because they've already kind of had that experience already and they've had a positive experience. We have around a 98% fixing rate for things that we choose to bring in. Obviously, if somebody like brings their car, that's probably going to be a little bit of a different thing that we have to do. But for the most part, people that do come in for the first time come back. And it's a pretty constant rotation, and it's increasing over time. Go ahead. Right. So how does Transition Fidalgo overcome certain parts and pieces not being available? Well, so as I mentioned earlier, the team of volunteers are relatively skilled at what they're doing, so they're able to kind of recognize what's wrong with it, and then they can either A, tell you how to go about finding the parts to fix them, or B, whether it's possible to repair them, or C, actually go and fix it themselves. We usually have a huge amount of things that we can kind of bring along, like nuts and bolts and screws that work for most of the stuff, and then we get them repaired so that we can just send it back to them right away.
Right, thank you, Chance. We're gonna move on to our next presenter in this session, Sean Terry. Sean is an environmental studies major and a geography minor, graduating in spring of 2025. I learned that Sean, despite being very mature, is graduating in only 3 years. That is incredible. I have no idea. After graduation, after speeding through this process, okay, After speeding through this process, Sean is going to take a well-deserved break. She'll be traveling abroad in the fall, but hopes to return to the area to pursue local government service. Besides having the best name, she is also an intramural flag football champion. The title of Sean's presentation is Leading Green Futures, Understanding the Challenges of Widespread LEED Certification. Her host organization was King County Executive Climate Office, where she worked with Carrie Lee and Timothy Randazzo. Her faculty advisor was Danya Al-Sahale. And with that, I will turn it over to Sean.
LEED is a green building standard guideline created by the United States Green Building Council, also known as USGBC, and in reducing environmental impacts to the built environment, buildings can become LEED certified, earning them the merit of leadership in energy and environmental design. This framework has been transformed into a green rating system for cities and counties known as LEED for Cities. The certification point system uses points based on innovations in natural systems, energy, water, waste, and transportation, and other factors that contribute to improving quality of life. Then, depending on how many points are awarded, applicants earn statuses such as certified, silver, gold, and platinum. The certification comes with multiple benefits, including financial tax breaks, zoning allowances, grants, increased property values, and competitive advantages in attracting residents and tenants. In the United States, 125 cities are LEED certified, including Bellevue, Issaquah, Seattle, Tacoma, and King County as a whole in Washington, but many major US cities such as Los Angeles, Dallas, and Boston are not certified. This thought led me to my research question, in which I asked, what are the challenges in achieving widespread LEED certification in the United States? To help me answer this question, I had the privilege of working with the King County Executive Climate Office on their upcoming LEED for Cities application. I worked to collect data across credit categories by compiling relevant policy and ordinances from King County, and in working across these categories, I could better understand what information USGBC is asking for and practice analytical, geographic, and research skills. I then conducted a literature review of pre-existing experiences with green certification programs in the United States and globally, as understanding the competitors and prior versions will lead to finding room for improvement and how competitive advantages can exist between such similar systems. Finally, I used suggestions provided from pre-existing literature and compared them to the interviews and experiences gained during my internship. I also had the chance to speak with city leaders from Houston, Texas, and Howard County in Maryland to learn more about their application process. Upon finishing my research, I found 4 main themes that impacted the application process. This included geographic constraints, issues with time management, the positives of working with USGBC, and the difference in application difficulty for both cities and counties. The main issue in applying can be described as any geographic features presented in the application area, such as size or how a city was originally developed. This can include difficulties in poor planning or improper infrastructure. King County spreads across 13 city jurisdictions with additional unincorporated areas, and so far in applying, they've struggled to work with the sheer size of the area. King County is also currently the largest county to have applied for LEED for Cities. In comparison, Howard County in Maryland is 253 square miles and is one large unincorporated area with no cities present. This created many benefits for the application and functioned really closely to how a city applies, making it much easier for them, as an important piece of applying lies in regional policy and ordinances. With this, Howard County was able to analyze policy only at the county scale, rather than how King County has been applying policy from the county scale while pulling in individual city policy with areas in the region. Another issue with the application process is time constraints. With each topic being highly specific, applicants have to pull in large teams of experts to compile data, and with other priorities, it can be difficult to do this work in a manageable amount of time. King County was first certified with LEED in 2016, and the recertification in 2025 will allow for updated funding and grants towards energy efficient projects. In remaining up to date on certification, King County also has the opportunity to become higher in status on the LEED scale. The project of recertifying King County with LEED will identify current sectors we're already focused on, and in emphasizing new areas, county executives can find new and innovative ways to integrate LEED standards throughout the county, which will then in turn improve citizen quality of life. In 2025, 125 cities are registered with LEED, and only 4 within Washington state, making information surrounding the difficulties of certification important for creating a framework within the state and nation to improve sustainability plans. Integrating LEED standards throughout the city and counties is an important step in the right direction for sustainable futures. And now we are left to wonder who will be next to conquer the LEED standards. I would like to thank all of my friends and family and the King County staff and everybody who supported me throughout this experience. And of course, shout out to Taylor Swift because I love her. I would now like to open the floor to any questions. Right here. Yeah, so the question was asking if there were anything that impacted our decision to work with Houston and Howard County. And so actually we decided to work with Howard County because we learned they were the first certified platinum, so the highest certification level county. And then upon speaking with them, we found out that their case is not very similar to ours, as they have earned platinum from kind of applying like a city, unlike how King County has been struggling with working across city jurisdictions. Any other questions? Yeah? That's a great question. So the question was asking, the question was asking if there was any, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. The question was, if you didn't hear for the second time, was what should be the bare minimum level of certification, or what should be suggested, and what category of certification should be most prioritized? I personally do believe that the certified level is a good base minimum, but cities and counties should be striving for more. And honestly, the base level of certification is just proving that you can follow standards at a very minimum level. But I do believe that honestly, there should be something higher than platinum. I want to know who's getting the perfect score, who's pushing in all of the work. And if there's a category to prioritize, honestly, the whole certification is about green standards, but it's also about improving quality of life for citizens, which is a big thing, and all of the factors like transportation taken to account of it and water safety. But I do think the quality of life credit is kind of a more holistic approach to the whole process.
All right, thank you so much, Sean. Our next presenter tonight is Shannon Cosgrove. Shannon is a program on the environment major and an international studies minor. She's pursuing departmental honors, and she's been on the dean's list every quarter since transferring there. So good on you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Hey, Shannon.
Oh.
Now here's the cool thing. Here's the cool thing. Shannon, for those of you who didn't pay attention to this when we sent out the message about it, Shannon recently received the Bonderman Fellowship. Yeah. Those of you who do not know what Bonderman is, it's quite cool, possibly the coolest fellowship ever.
Yeah.
It's a fellowship established to allow participants to see the world, essentially. So she will start in East Asia, travel through Taiwan, China, Japan, and South Korea, and then travel to Eastern Europe, go through Georgia, Turkey, and Montenegro over how many months?
8.
Over 8 months. And it's all paid for, y'all.
Yes.
Crazy. I just think it's awesome. I wish I could do it. The title of Shannon's presentation is The Language of Justice, Participation, Knowledge, and Power in Environmental Policy. She was able to work with the Agency for Toxic Substance and Disease Registry in Region 10 over winter quarter, where her site supervisor was Rhonda Tetzel, and her faculty advisor here on campus was Todd Wildermuth from the School of Law. Let's go ahead and give it up for Shannon.
I got. Oh. Yes. Yeah, I was. I appreciated that. Okay. Well, hope I'm getting really hungry, so I'm thankful that you're all still sitting with us, and me and my cartoon version of myself are going to take you through my favorite thing in the world, which is language. Language to me is a road. It's a road we created to connect with one another, to find meaning, and hopefully to create change. Unfortunately, the roads we've built are being destroyed by fires, flooding, earthquakes, and conflicts. From Palestine to the DRC to my own hometown here in Washington, shout out to Port Angeles, we are seeing a climate crisis that is not only an environmental issue, but a global human rights emergency. The cracks that have formed in this road were historic in redlining policies, toxic zoning, and historic neglect. Naming those issues is the first step to be able to repair them and make sure no more communities fall through the cracks. I interned with the ATSDR, a public health agency looking at the environment. Originally, my project was focused on environmental justice and understanding the communities they've served over the last 20 years. It was a clear road. It was beautiful. We were working with 4 federal tools of mapping environmental justice, and it aligned very well with my goals of understanding environmental communities on a federal level, which I want to translate to the international level in the future. Unfortunately, on January 21st, the day after my birthday, I walked into the office to an executive order that removed both Biden and Clinton's environmental justice directives. Not only was this a roadblock, it was censorship in action. I started my 3-month proposal and original project under administration seeking justice, and 4 weeks into my project, I was under an administration actively silencing us and banning us from the words environmental justice. And as dystopian as this sounds, this is the reality. These are sites I pulled last night. Fear is being used to repave the roads so that things like diversity and equity are being painted as things to fear rather than part of the solution. So, how do you do the work when you can't name the work? Luckily, I had the awesome support of my site supervisor, and we were able to work on the agency's mission on a different level, looking at historical data still. But on my own, in no way affiliated with the agency, I have been researching how can people influence existing power structures to create meaningful change and implement justice. Using my experience with diplomatic language and resiliency I learned, I found that if justice is the goal, then policy is the road leading us to that goal. But power is what gets to shape the policy and decide where that road is going. And right now, the power is being used to redraw what justice means. But fear not. In my research, I have found 3 ways that all of us in the room can get involved and find a new way to justice. Participation, knowledge, and power. I had the awesome experience still with participation in action in sitting in agency meetings and seeing the agency still work along with partners at the state level to develop and make sure that communities were still being involved at whatever capacity they could, which is extremely important. Community involvement is key. For us, maybe participation is voting, but it's also engaging in uncomfortable conversations with that friend who says they don't do politics. It means attending rallies and talking and looking into subjects that my cohort has been presenting to you all night. For me, knowledge was my compass through all of this. I love reading, and I spent so much time familiarizing myself with the agency that it was easy to pivot. For you, I'm encouraging you all to look, listen, and learn, and look at new sources, because knowledge paves new routes. If we think that definition frames what counts as justice, then we have to understand what are the potholes making it so the people who should be in the room are unable to access and speak up for themselves. So, language has long been used to dominate in human history, but it's also a tool for liberation. Now is not the time to see a roadblock and turn around. It's the time to put our foot on the gas and speed up. We need to stand in solidarity with everyone in the world because we're all on this crazy road together. So if we think of justice and we're trying to find our way there, use these guideposts of participation, knowledge, and power in your own life so we can find a clearer goal. So It was not easy. And honestly, Sean can speak to my mental breakdown I've had over the last 9 months. But censorship did not silence me. In fact, it revitalized me. And so I'm encouraging you all. It's the time for us to speak up, show up, and steer our way towards a better policy situation. Thank you. So I want to thank everyone I love, Rhonda, my site supervisor, Todd, my faculty advisor, my parents, my brothers who have sat through me giving this over and over and over, and my emotional support long distance cat who I kept going back home to see all the time. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. The question was, how will I use my guideposts throughout my own life? So, in this experience, I learned that in my own hometown, we have covered up a Superfund emergency of the Rayonier Mill site. And so this summer, before I take off on my epic world adventures, I'm going to be volunteering with the Olympic Environmental Council to speak at local farmers markets from Port Angeles to Port Townsend and educate people on what's going on in the upcoming public comment period at the state level. Yeah. And also, I'm graduating from being a student in the classroom to a student of the world to develop more perspectives and see how other people are getting involved. Thank you. Thank you. The question was, what is the importance of connecting with and collaborating with disadvantaged communities? Well, one thing is, I don't like the word disadvantage. The communities that we're dealing with that we call frontline communities are people who have been at the front line of this. They're standing on the giant cracks in the road. And they're also the ones who have been working without the right materials to find solutions. So really, to me, it's about uplifting and advocating their voices because they've already been finding solutions. We've just been silencing them. So bring them up.
All right, thank you so much, Shannon. Our next speaker is Megan Hassey. Before we go further, though, I have a confession. Megan is our penultimate. But I only use the word penultimate twice a year. I've been saying the word penultimate incorrect for the last 10 years. 10 years. Yesterday, my friend Tim Bellow, shout out to Tim Bellow, came by my office and said, Sean, if you use the word penultimate, make sure you pronounce it correctly. So this one's for you, Shan. This one's for you. The word is penultimate, everyone. And I'm saying it correctly in front of you today. So let that be a lesson to you, students. Let that be a lesson. You're never too old to be taught valuable lessons. And you should always surround yourself with people who will call you out. Even if it takes them 10 years, thanks a lot. Anyway, so our penultimate speaker is Megan Hassey. Megan is a double major in environmental studies and political science with a minor in geography. Pretty cool. That's a lot. She's pursuing departmental honors in POE, and she will be graduating summa cum laude in just a couple weeks. Yeah. Not only that, but just a few weeks ago, Megan was awarded the coveted Husky 100 Award. One of 100 teams across all of the university campuses. That's over 60,000 students. So that is big props to Megan. Big props. In addition to all of that, Megan is the president of the Environmental Policy Student Association and leads trips with peaks and professors, which is such an awesome thing as well. I wish I could. Anyway. But enough about that. The title of Megan's presentation is Clean Air Action, How Community-Driven Solutions Can Tackle Environmental Injustice and Policy Implementation. Her host organization was the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Region 10, where her site supervisor was Sandra Brzezowski, and her faculty advisor for campus was Gretchen Snegas from the Department of Geography. Let's give it up for them.
Yeah. Okay. I would like to start by commending Shannon first for managing such a difficult roadblock in her experience, and preface my own presentation by saying that as a probationary employee with the EPA, I was fired in the middle of my capstone experience by this administration, which created a lot of unexpected challenges for my project, but the show must go on. So with that in mind, do you ever feel disconnected from the people making policy that impacts your life? I bet. When policy is written in distant offices, it can feel like it's written for distant people. But for policy to work, it must reach real people with their own stories, cultures, and challenges. The Clean Air Act, signed in 1970 by the wonderful President Nixon, was a landmark step in addressing environmental health. Yet it initially failed to recognize the unique needs of marginalized communities, including any mention of tribal delegations. Due to their sovereign status, tribes are not subject to state and local implementation of the Clean Air Act, perpetuating an environmental injustice through a regulatory gap that leaves tribal lands with fewer environmental health protections. To help address this, the EPA created the Federal Air Rules for Reservations, or the FAR, a set of air quality regulations created in collaboration with Pacific Northwest tribes to meet regional needs. Now, despite the regional and tribal specificity of the FAR, it illustrates a broader policy challenge. If impacted communities aren't meaningfully involved, successful outcomes are unlikely. So, to understand how to bridge this gap between policy intentions and policy implications, I asked, how can policy implementation engage local communities to achieve equitable outcomes? To answer this question, I interned with the EPA's Region 10 Tribal Air Team, working with tribes across Alaska, Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. My project supported the Colville and Nez Perce tribes' air programs with an implementation plan for a proposed wood-burning rule under the FAR. For my research, I conducted 7 semi-structured interviews with state, local, and tribal air quality experts. And I completed a systematic review of literature on rural tribal outreach for health programming in the US. Based on this research, I identified 5 key barriers to rule implementation. These were communication gaps, knowledge gaps, messaging, public distrust, and resource limitations. A couple of important examples revealed from interviews included connecting to remote homes without internet, and government distrust due to a history of discriminatory policy. Based on these barriers and my research, I developed 5 broad recommendations for local policy implementation. First, prioritizing public awareness. Making sure the folks who are most connected have the breadth of information. They will be the best resource. This includes educating on smoke and health and on rule details. Second is thoughtful messaging. Interviewees emphasize using non-blaming, inclusive language to foster community ownership of the initiative and avoid defensiveness. Accessibility is crucial, including translating into all appropriate languages. Third is community partnerships. Community partnerships can share the burden of outreach and enforcement, such as community-based organizations, fire departments, tribal leaders, and schools. For example, a science experiment on inversion can teach students about a new air quality regulation. Fourth is community engagement. My systematic review emphasized meeting community members where they are at and involving them in the process through community meetings or community action committees. Lastly is multi-channel outreach strategies, which entails blending modern digital methods with traditional outreach methods, which are especially effective in rural communities, such as word of mouth, direct mail, radio, newspaper, and in-person events. Overall, these findings emphasize a community-driven approach to local policy implementation. So, what does this mean for environmental justice? We know that pollution disproportionately impacts overburdened communities. That's distributive justice. But policy that addresses where pollution lands is only part of the solution. Procedural justice means ensuring community voices are incorporated in environmental decision-making, and recognitional justice emphasizes considerations of individual values, cultures, and experiences. The community-driven approach is essential to ensuring policy works to benefit and not burden local communities. As federal environmental policies and agencies are under threat, focusing on local empowerment is crucial. Ultimately, to bridge the gap between policy and people, we need more than equitable rules. We need local voices, local leadership, and local trust. Because policy may be written in distant offices, but its impact depends on how it's brought to life in real communities. Thank you. I would like to thank my amazing friends and family, my faculty advisor, Gretchen Snegas, my site supervisor, Sandra Brzezinski, and everyone I worked with at the EPA, as well as all federal environmental workers who have been silenced, disrespected, and challenged by this administration. And questions? Yeah. Yeah. Something interesting that was mentioned in a lot of the literature on rural outreach in the US is how much people value social time together and how much that can be a strategy for public engagement, especially over shared meals. So community dinners is a great way to talk about issues that are important to people. Yeah. Yes, so although I am not technically working there anymore, my implementation plan was sent to the 2 tribes that the EPA is working with on this, and eventually, hopefully one day when things are kind of moving forward a little bit further with the federal government and these revisions to the FAR that I was talking about are integrated, they will be able to use my research as a resource to help them locally implement this new federal rule.
All right, everybody. It is that time. It is our final speaker in this session. Our last speaker is Benjamin Blatt. He is a double major in environmental studies and political science with a minor in international studies. He's graduating cum laude, and he's been on the dean's list every quarter he's been here at the university. Congratulations to you, Benji. After college, Benji is interested in a career in environmental politics. The intersection of environment and politics is near and dear to his heart, and so it's no surprise that these topics are the basis for his capstone, which you are about to enjoy. The title of his presentation is Blue State. Yeah, is Blue State Purple Policy: Lessons for Bipartisan Environmental Policy in the Puget Sound. His host organization was the Puget Sound Partnership, where he worked with John Burley, and his faculty advisor from campus was Karen Lipton from Political Science. Political Science. Political Science, right. Let's give it up for Benji.
I'm good. All right. Thank you guys for staying to the end. I appreciate your patience. I'll try to make this fast, and by fast, I mean the allotted 5 minutes. All right, so hello, friends and fellow nature nerds. I'd like to ask you a question. By raise of hand, who here sees environmental politics as a liberal issue? Yeah, I see a few hands, and I agree. Especially in recent years, it feels like a very partisan issue. But it wasn't always this way. Environmental politics used to be a bipartisan issue in the US. It wasn't uncommon to see Democrats and Republicans working together to establish the EPA or regulate polluters. Then, in the early 2010s, rising polarization and gridlock made it harder to pass federal environmental policy. At the same time, state governments became increasingly partisan, becoming entirely Republican or entirely Democratic, lowering the amount of divided governments. Here in Washington State, both legislative chambers and the governor's office are controlled by Democrats. Still, voters want to see their politicians working together. Bipartisanship is key to making widely accepted policy and overcoming environmental challenges. Nevertheless, politicians struggle to cross the aisle. So I ask the question, What features of Puget Sound environment bills correlate with successful bipartisan legislation? I interned with Puget Sound Partnership, a state government agency that manages a broad coalition of environmental stakeholders and conducts scientific research. They're awesome. I loved it. Though mostly remote, I traveled down to Olympia a few times to watch hearings and votes on bills that I cared about and tracked. I tracked a total of 215 bills that I determined to be environmentally related and fit within the geographic limitations of the Puget Sound watershed. For my research, I wanted to identify concrete variables, not the influence of ideology or lobbying that might influence bipartisan success. I decided that a bill was bipartisan if the sponsors were co-partisan, when one representative joins another from the other party to propose legislation. I looked for textual variables, like the primary focus, if the bill had environmental justice language, and whether it expanded or restricted choice. I also looked for two financial variables, the cost it would take for the government to implement this bill in the coming year, and the revenue impact the bill would have, either increasing or decreasing revenue. Finally, based on the committee that the bill was in, I assigned the bill as active, woo, or dead, boo. Now, let's dive into my results. Of the original 215 bills that I tracked, 48, that's 22%, are active and set to become laws. Of those active bills, 25, that's 11%, had bipartisan sponsors. So what trends distinguish this 11% of bills? I found that successful bipartisan environmental policy correlated best with bills that lowered costs, increased revenue, focus on top themes, avoid environmental justice language, and expand choice. First, I found that bills with lower operating costs were more likely to succeed. This shows that the government's doing its job, at least partially, to save us taxpayers some money. Yeah, that's good. Additionally, bipartisan bills were cheaper than partisan ones. For my second fiscal variable, I found that increasing revenue was a sure way to get bipartisan success. These bills increased revenue by instituting new producer or user fees for specific activities. Third, I found that bipartisan success correlated with budget bills, government organization bills, and bills that focused on topics like agriculture, water quality, public transportation, and tribal representation. Shockingly, I found that environmental justice frameworks correlated negatively with bipartisan support and passage. This shows that equity-centered language is likely too much of a hot-button issue for bipartisan collaboration and clashes with the anti-woke ideology of the current Republican agenda. Lastly, I found that bills which expanded choice were likely to attract bipartisan success. For example, Washington just passed the Sewage Spill Right to Know Act, which expands individuals' choice by giving a website showing where there have been sewage leaks or overflows. I hope that these 5 major takeaways will allow environmental coalitions to pre-screen bills for viability. With my research, stakeholders can choose which bills to support, fund, and amend if they check all the boxes for success. Future research should, as Jerry Maguire says, show me the money! This year, Washington State had a $15 billion budget shortfall. I'm curious if legislators were especially frugal or if they prioritized increasing revenue. I hope that this presentation has shown that there is a path forward for bipartisan success here in the Great Pacific Northwest. Thank you for your time. I'd also like to thank my faculty advisor, Karen Litvin, my site supervisor, Don Gurley, and my awesome capstone cohort, who has made this year an absolute blast. Thank you very much. I'd like to open the floor to questions if anyone has. Yes. That's a great question. For those who didn't hear, the question was, what incentives do politicians have to work across the aisle? Frankly, politicians want to appear more moderate. In a survey that I read that studied the language that politicians use, they found that the more ideologically extreme a politician was, the more likely they were to talk about bipartisanship on the Senate and House floor. So these politicians really just want to be more moderate, and they want your vote. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes. Ooh. There was a lot of environmental justice bills that did not get passed that I was really fond of, especially the bills that were allocating affordable housing, which really struggled this year in the legislature. Any other questions? Yeah, way back. Ooh, that's a great question. The person in the back asked how does this relate to environmental voter interests? Basically, if you want bipartisan environmental policy, vote for the politicians who say they're gonna do it, who say they're gonna collaborate with the other party. Politicians who act extreme will likely still act extreme when they're in office. Vote for politicians who are willing to talk to the other side, just like we are. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking it out to the very end. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much to all of our presenters. Can I just have a big round of applause for all of our presenters? Wow. They did a fantastic job. I'm so proud of all of them. And I'm really proud of actually all of the capstone students across both days of the symposium. Actually, I'm starting to get choked up. I knew it was going to happen. At this moment, it's probably good for me to turn the microphone over to our director, Monica Moscal. Moscal, not Moscal. I keep mispronouncing it. Here you go.
Okay. Thanks, Sean. Thank you, everyone. Well, we did the applause for all of the students, but I'm going to do a couple other shout outs. The judges, the site sponsors, the advisors, the POE faculty, and I'm going to ask them to stand up just so you can see who these amazing humans are. So not in any particular order, but Sean, Tim, Yenshu, Lubna, Eli, and Christy. Also, there's a lot of support from our staff. You might have noticed the two at the door, the people that you go in to have your advising appointments, people that are invisible to you but purchase the food and so on. I don't think they're in the room, but I do want to name them. So Courtney, Joy, Mia, Derek, and Amy, the POE staff. All right. As you've seen tonight, the POE students have gained skills and knowledge to create change towards resilient, equitable, sustainable future. POE students are leaders, they're curious, they're compassionate. I could just go on and on and on with these descriptions. They're innovative and deeply committed to making local and global change. Our capstone have doubled in participation in the last 15 years. These are not just final projects. These are examples of years of interdisciplinary learning, community partnerships, as you've seen, and personal growth. We're incredibly proud of this cohort, and we look towards seeing what kind of future you will contribute to with the big challenges ahead. Now, I learned a lot tonight, but one of the things that I've learned from the presentations is to engage with the audience. So how many of you have been inspired tonight? Raise your hand. Right, me too. If you want to help us further with these kinds of experimental and transformative learning experiences, we welcome your support. And it can be in any form. We welcome connections, conversations, and finally, donations. QR code, and you've seen that around. I had the POE faculty stand up because for those connections, conversations, they can point you to me. They can have those conversations with you as well. So feel free to reach out. My door is open, but I'm just one person, and there's so many more of us that you can have those conversations with. So your involvement strengthens our POE community and helps us shape the next generation of environmental leaders. Thank you. And I want to say thank you as well to our current donors, advocates, and partners. Without your help, none of this would be happening. So thank you again. We'll see you out there.
All right. Oh, yo, just one more thing before we go. I do want to just I know I should let you go. I should let you go. But I do want to just remind everybody that you can check out information on the symposium on our website. Look through all of the past projects, the posters that were done on day one, and really just take a look at all the work that students have done over the past 2 weeks. But other than that, I just want to say thank you for your time. Have a good night and enjoy your evening.